Thomas. How's it going?
Hi, Timothy. Hi, Jason.
Hello to everybody else out there. What are we, 37 now?
37.
Episode 37. Going right along here. How are things over there in Ireland, Thomas?
Stunningly beautiful weather. It's like the summertime. It's just fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Spring is right around the corner, and I can tell because my allergies are going absolutely nuts. So if I sound a little congested, that's why.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. Yep.
It's absolutely beautiful outside. It's nice to see all the little blossoms on the trees and everything, even though all the pollen is out there pissing us off, but it's beautiful. And I love all the smells of springtime too. But, again, it's also psychopath season, so we got to watch the fuck out. But again, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, our monthly subscribers. We got a couple little short trips that we're going to be taking here in the near future to get a few short films to you. We did a really awesome symposium this morning with James Shupsky, and we're going to be uploading that tonight over here on the West Coast. So tomorrow morning for y'all to wake up and have your put the kettle on, as Thomas would say, and listen to it when you've got. But that's a Thomasism. I can't dare touch that one. I don't drink tea as much as y'all over there do. I'm more of a coffee drinker myself. But have a coffee for me while you're watching this one, because this one is right in our neck of the woods with James Shupsky. But anyway, to get back onto the topic of the Week in Strange, I'm going to hand the mic over to Timony for our first story.
And away we go. On Jupiter's moon Europa, chaos terrains could be shuttling oxygen to the oceans. Saltwater within the icy shell of Jupiter's moon Europa could be transporting oxygen into an ice-covered ocean of liquid water, where it could potentially help sustain alien life, according to a team of researchers led by the University of Texas at Austin. This theory has been proposed by others, but the researchers put it to the test by building the world's first physics-based computer simulation of the process. With oxygen hitching a ride on saltwater under the moon's chaos terrains, landscapes made up of cracks, ridges, and ice blocks that cover a quarter of the icy world. The results show that not only is the transport possible, but that the amount of oxygen brought into Europa's ocean could be on par with the quantity of oxygen in Earth's oceans today. Our research puts the process into the realm of the possible, says lead researcher Mark Hesse, a professor at the UT Jackson School of Geosciences, Department of Geological Sciences. Okay. It provides a solution to what is considered one of the outstanding problems of the habitability of the Europa subsurface ocean. Europa is a top spot to look for alien life because scientists have detected signs of oxygen and water, along with chemicals that could serve as nutrients. However, the moon's ice shell, which is estimated to be about 15 miles thick, serves as a barrier between water and oxygen, which is generated by sunlight and charged particles from Jupiter striking the icy surface. If life as we know it exists in the ocean, there needs to be a way for oxygen to get to it. According to Hesse, the most plausible scenario based on the available evidence is for the oxygen to be carried by saltwater or brine. Scientists think that chaos terrains form above regions where Europa's ice shell partially melts to form the brine, which then can mix with oxygen from the surface. The computer model created by the researchers showed what happens to the brine after the formation of the chaos terrain. The model showed the brine draining into a distinct manner, taking the form of a porosity wave that causes pores in the ice to momentarily widen, allowing the brine to pass through before sealing back up. Hesse compares the process to the classic cartoon gag of a bulge of water making its way down a garden hose. This mode of transport appears to be an effective way to bring oxygen through the ice, with 86% of the oxygen taken up at the surface riding the wave all of the way to the ocean. But the available data allows for a wide range of oxygen levels delivered to Europa's ocean over its history, with estimates ranging by a factor of 10,000.
Thomas, we thought you might enjoy this one again with Europa. What is it? All the worlds in the solar system are ours except for Europa. Is that right?
Well, what did Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke know? Why end the film with that very cryptic message?
Right.
It's only gaining traction, this story, and they seem to be fixated on it has to be an Earth-like ocean. But if you look at the Earth, surface-wise, but if you look at the Earth's ocean, there's huge animals living down the very bottom in the Marianas Trench, where there's almost no oxygen, incredible pressure. incredible coldness, incredible darkness. So life can live in the most extreme places. So it's interesting. It's almost like you get the impression they know they discovered something from there, but they don't want to offend the Darwinists or the churches or anyone like that. So they're leaking out slowly over a matter of years.
Yeah, that's the impression I've always got from things like this, that there's always a tremendous amount of information from the space agencies and the intelligence community that has information about this. And I think they test the water a little bit with some of these stories and some of the other ones, just to kind of see people's reactions. Just like we were talking about in the symposium earlier, like at one point it was socially unacceptable to speak about conspiracy theories and strange Fortean occurrences, and now it's it's commonplace to discuss these things, especially now that there are outlets like this on YouTube and Facebook Live. People are more open to communicating about it, where before it was like people had their opinions and their experiences, but it was only shared within families. So nowadays, I think that coming from a quote unquote authority figure, people are like, oh yeah, the space agencies, NASA, everyone that's putting these articles out, I think they're testing to see how many of us are going to communicate about these things and the conclusions that people put together. And it's just like any other kind of acclimatization. If one day whomever announced that there was intelligent life somewhere else than Earth, the first reaction would be, people would probably be like, oh, that's bullshit. It's probably a tabloid type of thing, and they'd be talking about it less than they'd be talking about the Will Smith and what's his name thing. Like people are more interested in that. But anyway, but no, I think that they're slowly releasing this information. That's how people talk about disclosure. I think that's how disclosure will occur. And same thing with like the octopus concept, that there might be a cephalopod type entity that exists out there that could probably withstand interplanetary space travel. Unlike our bodies that we have as humans, there's probably some type of species that can live underwater and come out of water just like the octopus can. And that might be the origin of some of our species. And then I think there's a story recently too, I don't remember if it was you that shared this, but about a lot of the water on Earth coming from someplace else. Was that you that shared that, Thomas?
No, I didn't share it, but I know about the story. Yeah.
But same kind of thing, maybe some of the Earth's water is coming from Europa.
Yeah, and I'm still have to go back again to, if somebody from the intelligence services or NASA had a whisper in Arthur C. Clarke's and Stanley Kubrick's ear back in 1969, 68, whenever it was, then they already knew by that stage. So if they already knew that back then, what else do they know they're not telling us about, and for how long?
Yeah. Or it could be a big chaos working. We're generating a charge about it and creating a moonchild by, so to speak, a star child, I should say, by putting enough attention onto it. I also like that theory too, that we're creating a reflection of the egregore into space. People, we put enough attention on it, get enough people talking about life on Europa, and perhaps life on Europa will manifest, or not manifest. I hate that word, but life on Europa will be generated because of the amount of attention that we're putting onto it and the amount of charge there is, from the people who get all fucking triggered when I post pictures of the lunar excursion module, and they get so triggered. So there's such a psychic charge around the space program in general. So.
And also related to this story, I've sent you I sent you a picture. And of course, we can't talk about this without bringing this up.
One moment, I'm going to get this going. Let's see. Open file. All right, we got that file. Okay. All right, let me put this into the thing. Let's go to image, and we're going to go like that. And we're going to go to browse. See, I have to talk about fucking things that I do when I'm doing it. Otherwise. All right.
And there's the mic drop for the story.
Yeah, yep. Right over my face.
We'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Enough said, right?
Yeah.
That sums it up. All right. Sorry, my face is on fire from allergies, so just bear with me here. Oops, hold on. Technical difficulty. What is going on? Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Eerie red pillar of light in the night sky mystifies Houston residents. A spooky looking red pillar of light appeared in the night sky over Houston earlier this week and caused a brief sensation before the source of the strange glow was seemingly identified. The odd incident reportedly unfolded on Wednesday at around 8:30 in the evening when several people living in the eastern part of the city noticed something rather out of the ordinary in the horizon. Local TV stations were soon flooded with calls about the puzzling scene, with one outlet indicating that they were inundated with videos and photos of the peculiar red pillar of light. As one can expect in this day and age, social media was rife with all manner of theories for what might be behind the weirdness, though thankfully it didn't take too long for the mystery to be solved. Often the proverbial first line of defense when it comes to possible UFO events, local meteorologists appear to have put the pieces of the puzzle together. And while the anomaly was not alien in nature, how it came about is fantastic. The source of the illumination was found to likely be flaring that was occurring at a Houston refinery at the same time as the mass sighting. The light appeared in the clouds hovering over a different part of the city because it was being reflected into tiny ice crystals in the night, which gave the elongated pillar-like appearance. So, yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
How do I turn this thing off? There we go. Yeah, there's obviously, I mean, this is.
Yeah. I don't buy that one. That, a reflection of ice crystals in this night sky, and I don't buy it. That it's probably a part of the sun or something, or reminds me of those stories of pillars of fire though that you hear in like mythology and religion. Yeah. And also too, there's been so many of those, what are the sundogs, where there's like a reflection in the atmosphere bending somehow. And I want to say that, we've talked about, etheric energy in the atmosphere. And sometimes, there's currents of that energy. Now I'd imagine, that's a very natural occurring phenomenon to have that kind of etheric energy moving around in the atmosphere. And potentially sometimes that could refract the light in a certain way. And, it's a very natural occurring thing. And, we were talking about or James was talking about the weakening of the Earth's magnetic field. I would imagine, that things like that could cause the etherics, or just the atmosphere in general, the composition of it. It could reflect light in a different way and cause some different kind of aerial phenomena that we're not used to, that we might start seeing an increase of. But nonetheless, it's a pretty cool image, and that's just one of them from a screen capture. But there's ones from all over the place that it shows it in greater intensity and lesser intensity. But nonetheless, that whole story of it just being a reflection in the sky from natural gas. No, that's a little too far fetched. But I understand with these kind of articles, they always have to give the opposing point of view. Yeah, there is also that thing that these strange bands of light appear just before an earthquake. Do you ever hear about this one? Yeah. Before that, remember, it was a huge earthquake in Chile. I think it was 2008. It actually tilted the Earth on its axis. It was so big. But the actual videos of that, and this clear blue sky, you see this kind of like rainbow iridescent rainbow colors moving in the sky, which that alone is a very. So if I saw something like that in the sky, my first thing would be worried. I think it was about to be an earthquake. Right, earthquake clouds. I know. Was that the Banda Aceh quake? I want to say, or no, that might have been another one. That big one, massive one in 2008. Yeah, and the Earth actually tilted a little bit. It was so big. Yeah,
wasn't that the Indonesian one?
No, this is definitely Chile. Yeah, the one I was talking about, that was the Indonesian one, I think. But it's interesting because I back in my day when I first started digging into the depths of YouTube, I remember finding a number of videos. Like people don't make YouTube videos like they used to back 10, 15 years ago. But I remember seeing just a number of real fascinating YouTube videos and documentaries about, different types of clouds like this right before an earthquake. And, sometimes people talk, the topic of HARP got brought into it, the ability to But it's like, again, a couple of years ago, HARP was considered to be totally conspiracy theory, and now it's like you can go onto Wikipedia and see how it's owned or was owned by the University of Fairbanks, Alaska, and then before that it was sold to them from the Air Force, and now I think the Air Force owns it again or something. But no, but those earthquake clouds for sure, that's something. And whether that's because the tectonic plates are building up a certain amount of tension, and that tension is projecting something up in the atmosphere above it. That's what I would imagine. So maybe this was something similar to that, like a building of tension or somehow, but it wasn't necessarily warping the atmosphere the way that those earthquake clouds do.
Yeah. There's the reason why there's not as much interest in those videos anymore is because all these CGI fakes, people became jaded. They see a video and they go, "Oh, that's really cool," and then someone turned around and so it was a fake. So I think people are not excited about those videos anymore just because the amount of faking that went on.
Yeah, and also too, it just seems like the search algorithm within YouTube, you can type in the exact title of something that you might have seen back in 2010, and you try to find that video and you can't find it through the search engine. But if you have somebody who like emailed it to you a long time ago, you can go into your inbox and find that link and go directly to that video, even though it's not searchable. So it's like kind of like the way you can do unlisted, like with YouTube, you can upload something and put it as public, and then there's unlisted and private. It's kind of like, I think the algorithm will take some things and kind of shadow ban them in that way, the same way like an unlisted video would be not available to the public unless you have the URL to it.
Yeah, Google is a terrible search engine. Useless.
Yeah. Yep. It shows you what the establishment thinks is acceptable to be shared.
And also, it's all about commercial sites selling you stuff.
Yeah, Google Ads. Yeah, but yeah, the YouTube isn't the same as it used to be. But we like to keep old school YouTube alive here on Beyond Room 3 and the Week in Strange. We are
old school. We are old school public. Forget YouTube. We are old school public access TV. That's we are.
That's right. Yep. I was just gonna say, we cut our teeth, or I cut my teeth at least on those old school YouTube videos, and found Thomas's work back, I don't know, maybe like 2013, 2014, I want to say. So it's cool coming out of that and then ending up into that paradigm. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Okay, here we go. Scientists build robotic fish powered by human heart cells. Scientists at Harvard University have engineered an artificial fish whose flapping tail is powered by cells from a human heart, a groundbreaking project that has ignited hopes for the future of cardiac research. The team of scientists at Harvard, in collaboration with Emory University, built the biohybrid fish using paper, plastic, gelatin, and 2 strips of living heart muscle cells, the contractions of which pulled the fish's tail from side to side and allow it to swim. The research team published its findings in the journal Science last week, and video released by Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Sciences on Twitter shows a small robotic fish flapping its tail and moving about for about 20 seconds. The study marks a hopeful step in the advancement of heart treatments such as pacemakers. The benefit of this fish project is that we are still trying to master the craft of using living cells as an engineering substrate. The heart is extremely complex, and it's not enough to mimic the anatomy. One must recreate the biophysics in order to have the robust behavior required of building engineered hearts for children born with malformed hearts. Earlier, Parker had told NPR that at first scientists were not sure how long the school of artificial fish would function, but they swam for more than 100 days. Parker told The Guardian that the team was pleasantly surprised. By replacing the biophysics of the heart into the fish, we were activating various processes within these cells that are designed to help them sustain themselves. We are hoping that in our next endeavor, we will keep these cells in these tissues alive much longer than even 4.5 months. The muscle cells in the experiment reportedly grew stronger with exercise, a positive indication that this could be implemented in treating heart failures. Parker was also previously part of a Harvard team that in 2016 built a small robotic stingray also powered by heart cells from a rat that contracted when exposed to light. Despite the latest extraordinary development, Parker says a lot more work still needs to be done. We learned what we needed to learn. We have adapted the inventions to our current efforts to understand pediatric disease. And now we are moving on to try to build a more complex model of a three-dimensional marine organism using human cardiac cells and human cardiac biophysics.
Creepy. So they made a fish NPC.
Yeah, it's they need, there's loads of puns in there, isn't it? Like, it sounds fishy to me.
Yeah.
I'm not hooked on this story. They need to go back to school. Yeah, fish NPC. Yeah, they made themselves in fish form.
Yeah, right. A couple of heart cells. They don't have anything. They don't have a heart other than a couple of heart cells. Yeah. Creepy though, but just it's like I see in this. It's like they it's again like we're talking about slowly releasing information. It's like slowly getting people hooked on the idea of transhumanism and integrating biology. Yeah.
And appealing about the kids. It's about children. It's about children.
Right.
Appeal to the heartstrings,
Mm-hmm. The 3 heart cells that they have. That's the hook, as Timothy just said.
Yeah. They got to be caught in me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it's just it's creepy though that they're doing this. Now I'd imagine there are other terrible creations out there that these laboratories are making besides cute little fish that can swim around. It looked like, the pull tab off of a beer can with like maybe a few heart cells in it wiggling around. But I would imagine they've got some other, I'm going to use the word because I know everybody hates the way I pronounce it. They've got some cool chimeras that they're making, I'm sure, chimeric entities where they're creating hybridization of different animal species and merging them with technology. I would imagine there's some nasty Mengele shit going on, Mengele type shit with the transhumanist people and these biotechs types that live over or that work over here in the Pacific Northwest. Whenever I would do deliveries around those biotech plants, it was just the creepiest vibe, as if you're going around like, yeah, I would imagine it's like, oh, what kind of stuff goes on in there? And it's like the people that I would deliver food to just were total. There was nothing there, and it's like I deliver food to all kinds of people of different social classes, different socioeconomic classes, and there's the strangest people were always like the really high up tech people and these biotech people. It's just like there's nothing there. So it's like the work that they're doing in the biotech industry, it's like they're mocking up their own emptiness. Like you said, they're creating themselves in fish form.
Yeah, what you call is like that. Cambridge in England, you're coming into the city, you come through all of these US and British nuke bases, and then you enter into the city, and at the north of it, I think it's south of it, there's all animal research labs. And the whole atmosphere is like demonic. The whole place feels demonic to me. Everything about it. Don't like the people there or anything. It's like a really creepy place. And it's all those people you're talking about. And, about 10 years ago, I saw something where they made these little miniature robots. And the robots had a program in them where they would have to learn from the boss robot. And so the boss robot would do a little dance in a box or whatever. And then all the little robots would start understanding that was what I had to do. And what was interesting was that if a robot didn't do the dance that the boss robot did, all the little robots who were doing the dance would attack him. So you can really see how that NPC mind works,
Yeah. The NPC mind is so interesting with the way that like the mimicking of the behavior of the dominant personality or the dominant the dominant personality in the room, whatever the biggest personality in the room is, it seems what NPCs and some normies do, or just some people in general, just without any of that. Like, it seems like there's this phenomena where certain types will just copy the behaviors and mannerisms of the dominant personality. Yeah. And I think it's somewhat of a light form of hypnotism in that way, where people can become mesmerized by that dominant personality and just start mocking it up themselves. But I just noticed that so much out there in public with people. But yeah, it's funny. John Stewart Price, he put in there how the transhumanists proves how boring swimming actually is. It's one of those. So that and cycling, I don't know. I'm sure we've got a few cyclists in here, but man, psychopaths, man, they're out there and they're like biking around in people's blind spots.
Yeah, but I used to love cycling, and I used to cycle in the countryside. I have no desire to go anywhere near a cycle path. It's so funny where cycling was such the most wonderful hobby in the world, and the NPCs turned it into like this robotic thing.
Right. It's not mountain biking. It's not going out on a cruiser, but
just even road biking, just going on holiday in your bike. They've robbed that. They can't understand. They could not understand going for a spin in the countryside, so they had to have their little robot paths.
Yep. Yeah, and then over in Seattle, they've taken out a number of lanes to put bicycle lanes in, and it's just ever since I was a kid, I always looked at bike lanes. I'm like, man, that's so fucking dangerous. Why are they mixing up the why are they bike lanes? Why are they mixing up the bike lanes with the traffic lanes? It's just that it's such a recipe for disaster. But anyway, NPCs and their NPC shit, they've taken over so many things in life. Like you were talking about in one of your videos recently, Thomas, about how you used to be able to go to events and people would go to things. People would go to these conventions like the model conventions, and people would order stuff from brick and mortar shops. And nowadays it's like people are just collecting the stuff and not doing anything socially anymore. And it's like the enjoyment of doing human life in the traditional way of doing things is
the only thing that hasn't been affected is the sports. They're still going to stadiums in their thousands. Yeah. So I wonder what it is about the stadium that still attracts them. But if it's anything like like I said, like a craft fair or something like that, the trade stands are just not as busy as they used to be. It's like I said, they've been so conditioned to buy everything off Amazon or eBay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I sometimes wonder, again, we're getting off topic, but I wonder if the whole Rona thing and everything that's occurred in the last 2 years was just designed to create this world, so Zoom calls and the integration of nearly 100% or 80% online life. Yeah. And if that was the beta test for it, and now they're trying to implement some of these things. I sometimes wonder if that's all it was. Like we look at our esoteric explanations for things, and I'm sure there's an esoteric explanation for that phenomena if that's it. But I look at it and I'm like, what did we get in the end? We got Zoom, and we got lots of shit off of Amazon, and me as an Uber Eats driver got a lot more work. That's about it. Yeah. But yeah, this fishy thing that they're doing with the heart cells and the little beer tab floating around in an aquarium, I would imagine that we're going to start seeing more and more things like this, where wearables that are going to be and the same thing, they're always appealing to people's heartstrings. So there's like all the wearable technology out there that they're like the cochlear implant, whatever it is that they put back here it goes into the neurology in the brain for hearing. And there's all these wearable technologies that are being put out there with this concept of, it's for the good of people, especially children, and it's just going to start getting more and more funding towards this stuff. So right now they're talking about the needlecraft and everything being a mandatory thing. Who knows if somewhere down the road you'll have to have certain types of wearables in order to go into a restaurant, having all of your medical information like on a smartwatch type of thing that's tapped into your neurology somehow, like, you haven't had your this, and you can't prove that you've done your that, so we can't let you into these restaurants now, and your digital currency isn't available to be used. But again, that's my dystopian ass looking at things. But it just makes me wonder if that's the plan, is to get us more hooked into the Internet of Things era.
Well, speaking of which, I was listening to an interesting radio discussion with this guy who's the current CEO of a fairly famous sportswear brand company here in Ireland. And the guy was talking about, we've been in business since 1930. We've produced all kinds of sportswear. We've been very successful. But our next stage is beginning. And you get to this messianic zeal about the Internet of Things being incorporated into clothes. And he goes, clothes that will actually read your thoughts. It's amazing. Clothes that will change your temperature when you're cold, make you warm. Clothes that will actually seep medication into your skin through the dermal barrier if you want. And he was in this like messianic frenzy, talking about like he couldn't wait for it to be able to sell these clothes make these clothes with his company. It's the creepiest shit.
Yeah, it's weird. It's amazing how like all these tech people or that type are they're trying to recreate something that already exists. Like your fucking body does that already. Your skin regulates temperature. Your body releases hormones and different chemicals to itself already. So it's like they're already these things already exist.
You buy a winter coat for fuck's sake, yeah.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Right. But just like, it's just interesting how they're trying to mirror things that already exist. Like, yeah, your body already does read your thoughts. When you think about something spooky, the little hair follicles, pucker up on your arm and stuff, or on the back of your neck. It's like your body already does react to your thoughts. And why would you want clothes that react to your thoughts too?
Like, ground one of the transhumanist thing was TV remotes, because that just made people think that you press a button and things happen. And I remember when I lived in America, there was a product called the Clapper, and they had an ad called clap on, clap off, and I switched the light on and off. And I was just like such, I was waiting for the ads to come. I was just joke at the time with my friends saying, they'll have advertisement next saying, hands. They're so messy, aren't they? They get dirty, and why do you need hands when you can have prods, like electro prods or something,
Yeah.
That's what they like.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's enough people out there would buy into that, and they would give up their human body to get uploaded into a simulation, upload themselves into Roblox or something. But yeah, it's weird. And there's enough people out there who get the romanticized version of this and end up wanting to do it. But yeah, the transhumanist stuff is so creepy. But there was something I was going to say about that, but I lost it. I'm trying to circle back to it. Oh well, I lost it. So should we hit the next one, or? Oh, it is psychic weather time. Are you ready for that one right now, Thomas? All right, let's hit it.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The week in psychic weather.
Hi again. This week's psychic weather is something that seems to come about every few years. And I was talking to people I know about and my friends and stuff. And there seems to be a point, it kind of happens within the human the local conscious, or the zeitgeist, or the collective conscious, where this nostalgia almost takes over. A very powerful sense of nostalgia for things in the past. And it seems to be happening right now. You have this remembering people that are no longer in your life, wanting to go to visit places that you haven't been to in years, looking back at the past, and the emotional power. It is a very powerful emotional resonance inside you. And I was just talking to some other people yesterday. I was out with them saying the same thing. And I said, I've been having these just powerful senses of nostalgia. Like, I went back and I listened to Roxy music albums that I hadn't heard in years. And I found myself almost in this time machine, transported back to that time. And then other people were saying the same thing. And that got me thinking, is there something more powerful about the psychic weather of this collective sense of powerful nostalgia, in that we're probably living in a life or a world that we're probably not good for us? We're probably not zoned in on this properly. And this search for nostalgia is a sense of getting back to where we used to be and what we were meant to be, rather than being in the artificial place we find ourselves now. So that seems to be, from what I can tell, this week's psychic weather. Nostalgia is very deep, very powerful, and seems to be affecting people very strongly. And that's the week in psychic weather.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The week in psychic weather.
I like the way you put that, Thomas, about we're perhaps in on a path right now. Not we individually, but we collectively as humankind are on a path right now that has strayed far away from what life should be like, or what we've created as a destiny, into a mock-up of a destiny that's not within natural law or something, for instance, but that there's a yearning to go back to the way things were. And I was talking to Norma Bracken about this recently. It was maybe a few weeks ago or maybe a month ago at this point, but I was having a tremendous amount of nostalgia. And I think I was talking to my mom about this too. For the time frame of about 2007, late 2007, and I can almost put a pinpoint back. And I know we talked about 2016 recently, but it's almost like that was like the event horizon there before going over into like an incredibly digital world where, you know, it was like right before smartphones were a thing. I think the iPhone had come out in 2006, I want to say. And back before then, the only thing we used our phones for was like texting. You know, we had the number pad on there, and you had to, you know, it took you 15 minutes to write out a few lines of text, but we didn't have the complexity of internet connectivity and YouTube videos on our phone until shortly after 2007. So it's like I've had this nostalgia listening to music, things reminding me of things from that era. A song I shared with you and Timothy in our group chat the other day, like from that era of things that I was interested in, people who were in my life, foods that I was into then, topics I was into then. There's this nostalgia that I've had for that. And that would make sense for me, you know, going back to an era before I had a smartphone is what it was for me, you know, right about that time frame. So
you scared me down when you told me that Norman Bracken was telling you stuff. I thought she was going to tell you that me and Norman behind the school hall.
Well, I wasn't going to share that one online, but no.
But yeah,
No,
I think nostalgia is a very underrated emotion or state or whatever it is. I think it's not fully appreciated. You're having these nostalgic feelings for a very, very real reason. It's absolutely not like just like a fleeting thing, because you know yourself when you have them, Jesus, it can be really powerful. It can sort of like swirl through your body. And it could be just something like being triggered by, I find that Indian summer type weather has really kicks off the nostalgia in me for some reason. I don't know why. The long shadows and the longer evenings. But I think nostalgia, it's funny, you know, the scientists, they go looking at everything, right? They look at fish that are made of heart cells that swim. But how about trying to figure out what nostalgia is and why we feel it? And it's more than just like, oh, the good old days, because it's almost like a primal sensation that, what's the word? You're supposed to feel for a reason.
right. Yeah, it's kind of like, it was like 2015, I want to say. There was like a big retro thing going back to 80s stuff. There was like everything, 80s colors, 80s music trends within music. I was really getting into music production then. It was just like this thing of like going back to early 80s analog synths and effects processors from that era. And it was just like there's all these trends within music production that were like, you got to go back to the 80s, and there's that. And I guessed that, okay, there's going to be something like that happens too at the 90s coming up around 2020. And sure enough, it has. And there's a number of TV shows out there that are like based in the 90s and everything. But it's always the memes and tropes throughout all those things. It's always this return back to the analog, whether it's with the analog gear or the tapes or the vinyl. It's like all these things, you know, even though we're talking to you on a digital medium right now through Facebook Live and YouTube, it's like there's just this trend of going back to the analog signal, you know, with the music production side of things, you know, having an oscillator generate an actual oscillator with, you know, the 555 chip and everything in it, generating those waveforms rather than within software. We've got very sophisticated virtual oscillators in there, which essentially do the same thing and generates that sawtooth wave or the square pulse wave or a sine wave, but it's not the same quality that you get from a piece of analog gear. Anyway, my whole point is that there's just this thing about nostalgia that's taking people back to the more analog way of doing things.
No, you're absolutely
like you were saying,
right.
Thomas, yeah.
You're absolutely right. These psychopaths, mark my word, eventually what will happen is, it's funny how psychopaths and psychopaths sound similar. These psychopaths you'll get people going back to old-fashioned road touring cycling like we did in the old days when we were growing up, and we got a knapsack or a bag and we went for cycling holidays in the countryside on the country roads. Mark my word, that will come back. And people will get sick and tired of this, just like the vinyl and everything else. They'll get sick and tired of the sterility of all these psychopaths. And what they've done is they've converted a lot of old rail lines into these things as well. And they've done that all around Ireland. The one around Southern has been done into that. And it's not the same. It's not the same because nobody lives along those places. You don't see life. You don't see farms. You don't see nothing, you know. So, and I often think that's a scam as well, not to open up these old rail lines. But
Yeah.
I think definitely you'll see. Yeah, but mark my word, in a few years' time, they'll have the old-fashioned touring bikes, and they'll be off. Oh, cycle lanes are sterile and boring. They're no fun.
Yeah. And the other creepy thing about those rail lines that have been taken over, they did a lot of that when I was stationed over on the East Coast in South Carolina. There was a number of short lines that had been opened up. They took the tracks out and they turned them into cycle paths. And what I kept thinking about that is those are all like very remote areas that humans don't go into.
Yeah,
they're fenced off for years, and there's these tunnels. I'm like, what kind of entities live in there? That these NPCs, these meat golems that go around that don't have an entity behind the wheel. You know, a perfect place for an entity to walk into these psychopath types, the Lycra Brigade, and take them over. It's like I saw that as a very bad idea. That suddenly, this tunnel that's been closed down for the last 60 years is now open, and all these NPCs on their bicycles are riding through there.
And they do it once, and then they lose interest in it.
Right.
Because
They spend.
You've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spend $2,000 on a bunch of gear, and they do it once, and they pick up the next thing next time the season changes.
And meanwhile, there's all regular country lanes all around where they live. They should be cycling on and enjoying the real cycling.
Yeah, or getting a mountain bike and going out there on the terrain. Yeah. So.
Okay, I'm excited for this one. Folk magic, the hex signs of Pennsylvania. In 1952, a Berks County folk artist named Johnny Ott started painting and selling colorful, stylized discs inspired by the large decorative stars that commonly adorn the barns across Pennsylvania German country, still colloquially known as Pennsylvania Dutch country. Unlike barn stars, which were painted directly on the signs of the structures, the wooden hex signs, a term likely derived from the Pennsylvania German word hexafu, or witch's foot, could be ported around and hung not just on barns, but anywhere. Ott marketed hex signs as objects of folk magic, ascribing specific meanings and power to the symbolism on the signs. If you believe in that kind of thing, 4 and 5 pointed stars conjure good luck. 8 pointed stars conjure fertility or abundance. 2 disselfinks, the Pennsylvania German word for goldfinches, conjure love and happiness in marriage. 16 points brings prosperity. A bird of paradise means welcome. The rosettes and stars of a daddy hex ward off famine. Oaks and acorns bring strength. While Ott wasn't the first person to make the barn star designs portable, they probably happened in 1950 when Kutztown Folk Festival director Dr. Alfred Shoemaker and artist Milton Hall responded to festival goers' desire to purchase the barn stars. Ott's emphasis on magical properties popularized the signs to such an extent that they have become emblematic of Pennsylvania German culture. Today, hand-painted hex signs appear not just on barns, but homes and businesses all over southeastern Pennsylvania. And mass-produced versions can be had at pretty much every gift shop and decorate tourist attractions like Crystal Cave and Roadside America. Each year, the Kutztown Folk Festival brings together the best hex sign arts in celebration and commerce. Additionally, local convention and visitors centers in Berks and Lancaster counties offer maps and self-guided tours of authentic hex sign locations, and local artists continue the tradition of hand painting and restoring the signs. Although the aesthetic of the region, with its clapboard churches, Amish buggies, antique stores, and farms, leans towards the quaint rather than the creepy, artistic expressions of folk magic and nature symbolism have a long history among the Pennsylvania German. As an agrarian community dependent on the cycle of nature, artists incorporated geometric designs associated with the circle of life and divinity into elaborate illuminated columns and documents, such as birth and marriage certificates. This folk art form, known as fracture, was practiced primarily between 1740 and 1860, and often contained images and symbols that would later appear in the hex signs. These things are really cool looking. We actually have them on barns over here. I've seen them driving around, and they've always struck me as really beautiful, but now I know there's actually some symbolism with it.
I've been there about, I don't know, back in the 1990s. I was doing a week-long course at RCA in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I took the train down from New York and changed to Philadelphia and went out to Lancaster. The second day of the conference, I was bored out of my tits, and I met these two guys that were from Reading, Pennsylvania, and in the bar, and they were like, "This is boring crap, isn't it?" Yes, yeah. So we all had expense accounts. So what we decided to do was rent a car, and they wanted to show me around Pennsylvania. Really nice guys, and we were just like eating in really nice restaurants and stuff. But we went around all these houses, and he showed me. He said, "Here's the famous hex signs from around here. You're right, Timothy. They're beautiful, and they look really great on the houses. And some will have, they're like roundels. Some will have one on one side and one on the other side of the barn. And it's Haxan. It literally means magic in some kind of Proto-Germanic term. That's what I thought anyway. But yeah, they're really cool. And this is a great example of people from Europe, immigrant groups from Europe going to North America and bringing their magic with them. That's a very prosperous part of the East as well. Very productive farmlands, lots of wealthy farmers around there, living in these traditional houses with the Haxan on them. There's a real sense of prosperity in the area. So it makes you wonder if those sigils on the side of their houses worked, and like actually helped kept the community prosperous and the farm is fertile and productive.
Absolutely, and I just think that it's so beautiful that it is a folk magic tradition, and it would be as she was reading that, I was thinking of the idea of like in our current era with a new folk magic emerging from channels like our own and the people that are here with Tina and with everyone who's got their channels. It's like, imagine we get to the point where it becomes somewhat common to see people creating their own sigils and putting them on their front doors or on their cars, where it's like there's so many different ways you can make a sigil any way you want, and getting those out there and putting them into prominent places, and kind of like a folk magic version of chaos magic. I feel like chaos has there's the Golden Dawn Thelema and then the chaos movement, and it's like there's this new folk magic that's occurring as we're going more back towards a simpler way of doing things, I want to say. The complexity of life has changed significantly since, like I've always been talking about, since 2016. It's like we reached a pinnacle of complexity at that point, and then we've crested back over, and we're going into more of a simpler time as far as that. So it's like a new type of modern folk magic, not a return to something, but a new creation, a new form of magic is coming about. And I would like to say that part of that is going to be the ability that people are going to have of creating their own sigils and putting them on their doors, putting, like I said, cars, artwork, in their YouTube videos. And it's just like we're going to start seeing these things. We'll be out in public, and I've seen a number of times enough now where there's just like you used to see street art all the time, like graffiti and tagging, and there's all the big beautiful like colorful artwork with the bubble letters and everything. And it's like more and more I'm starting to see sigils out there painted onto rocks and painted onto train cars. It's like the whole since YouTube is blown up with all kinds of things, there's the hobo jags that the guys riding the trains, they've got these sigils that they'll put onto train cars, and you can sit there and watch the freight cars go by and see all these hobo jags, people marking, the hobo's name, and they've got the different symbols on there, and you can walk by the train tracks and see, you can go online and Google it, and you can see what all the little symbols are, but you can see like this is a safe place to sleep. This is a dangerous area. There's cops through here, or there's people on the other side of the fence that'll give you food. And if you just look for it, you can go by the side of the train tracks and find these sigils. Essentially, if you know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're just seeing two lines diagonally on a sign, and you would walk right past it and not think of anything, for instance. But I do like this emerging folklore and emerging folk magic that we've got and people are developing nowadays.
When I was down there, this is an interesting one. Let me hear this one. I asked the people in the area what part of Germany did their ancestors come from, because I'm not aware of anywhere in Germany that this tradition exists. And they didn't know. They all said, I don't know, the old country. They couldn't tell me the actual part of Germany they came from, because I was trying to find out, does this thing still exist in Germany? Well, no, it doesn't. It seems like they took the entire thing, lock, stock, and barrel, to Pennsylvania. And it was basically whether it died out or whatever in Germany, but it only really exists in Pennsylvania and a few other places like where Timothy said. It's really interesting. Now, about what you were saying about emerging folk magic, I read something today that kind of made me laugh, but then I thought about it later on, and it kind of was profound. There was an artist here who's, you know what mummers are, you know, Wren boys. It's a pagan festival thing in Ireland where they make a straw hat and they cover themselves in, and they do it during the pagan festivals, and the men at certain days of the year will go around playing instruments or wearing dress. They have these distinctive straw pagan kind of things, and they're made from the sheaves of wheat. And this woman had pointed out that traditionally in Ireland, they were made from barley or oats because wheat doesn't grow well in Ireland. So it was like barley or oats. And in recent decades, they've been made from wheat imported from Russia and the Ukraine. And she was saying, well, we could she was a stupid thing she said in theory, that we can like support the Ukrainians by people growing their own barley and oats in Ireland and making their own hat from that. And at first I laughed at the superficiality of it, but then I thought about it. My God, yes, she's right. That's the missing magic ingredient. The people in the ancient past, before imported grain, would have grown their own oats and barley in their own field or back garden, and then made their mummer's costume from that. So in a kind of direct chaos magic, superficial, stupid way, she's actually brought back the real magic. And that's the beauty of this stuff. It's you often hear me talk about the poetry of magic, the poetic unfoldment of it. And that was a classic example.
Yeah, you're right. No, I like that. And it's like the chaos approach of using correspondences that are right there in your life, whether it's a type of food that you liked eating at a particular time when that thing was important. It's like, yeah, you incorporate that into a ritual or whatever it is, the scents and everything. You don't need to go and find magical correspondences that people used in the 19th century for the correspondence of things. Like if there's a type of candle, or if there's something that you bought at the Dollar Tree with someone, or if there's some particular place, that's what's incorporated into your ritual work, and that has more of a charge to it because it's custom. I hate using that word, but it's custom to whatever it is that you're doing for that working. Yep. You know, bringing in
custom in the ritual, yeah. Custom in the real sense.
Right. Yeah. Custom in the true sense of that. Yeah. So, but I like that. I like that this folk magic is coming back. And I was going to say too, I think we've talked about it a number of times. I want to say that there's a real sense of folk magic in the old cowboy traditions before things became so Christianized in the last century or so. I want to say like there's definitely a real strong mysticism, at least within cowboy mythology, and in some of the the different bandanas and different symbolism that they use within the clothes that they wear. I want to say that I see some correspondences in there.
I think that you're right on the money there. If you think of like the first cowboys, they would have been like fellas, a lot of them are Irish actually, that came like didn't like the cities in the East Coast and sort of became agents of fortune in the West. And when you see the sheriff's badge with the pentagram and everything on it, you wonder how many of those guys brought their own stuff from the old world with them into the West.
Yep, or the heptagram on a lot of state troopers. It's like they're bringing Babylon with them or something. Babylon, not with the Y, with the A.
There you go. There's a great avenue of investigation. The occult in the Wild West.
Yeah, I know. It's a fascinating thing. There is an American magical tradition. There is a spiritual tradition here in the United States, not just American as in the continent, but as Americans, as United States people, American folklore goes beyond just Pepsi and Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Santa Claus, and Christianity. It's like I know that's and don't forget baseball, as Timothy said. But no, there's so much more to our mystical and magical traditions. Like we're talking about the Pennsylvania Dutch here in this article, and it's like there's some real stuff, and there's people out there. I'm sure we've got viewers that are tuning in now, friends. They're like, oh yeah, my family's Pennsylvania Dutch. I've met a number of people who are Pennsylvania Dutch, and being able to go back to those traditions and everything, or not necessarily go back to them, because I don't like that concept within magic of a retroduction to that way, but drawing inspiration and seeing that there is a lineage, and then coming into the present time and doing something with that in present time in a relevant way. like we were talking about the chaos approach to things. There are those archetypal resonances back from your ancestors, from the people that share a genetic line with you, but the ability to create something in present time and move forward. So it's not a retroduction to going back to an old way of doing things, but creating a new way of doing things that uses that same kind of traditional concepts that were found in the pre-Christian era. Because people say that the United States is a very Christian place. No, it's not. It's not. I mean, if anything, it was very Freemasonic in the way that the founding fathers. Yeah.
Where's the Kabbalah practiced more than anywhere else in the world? Among the Hasidic Jewish communities in places like Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and there's millions of them. And that's the hotbed of Kabbalism. So, I mean, already America is the heart of Kabbalism, just by virtue of that, the Orthodox Jewish communities on the East Coast.
Yeah, right. And so there's a strong mystical and magical heart within the United States, and I don't know if there was some time around, I want to say it's like the post-war era, the post-World War II is when things kind of got a whitewash of Christianity painted over everything, and Coca-Cola and Santa Claus and everything being all good. I think that came about in what I call the kind of Puritan revival of that era, and we're still in the death row. Yeah, McCarthyism. Okay, yeah, that's right. You've said that term before, and I need to look into that. So thank you for reminding me. But yeah, being able to get past that whitewashing of things, and I want to say like the whole CIA operation or whatever it was with COINTELPRO and everything, the hippie movement was all designed as like a fake way out of that McCarthyism, a fake way out of that Puritan overlay, where it's like, nope, that needs to be maintained. So the counterculture to the stiffness of that was manufactured just to loop people back into the same thing. The whole hippie movement is Christianity wrapped up. You take the template of words and you take out Jesus Christ and God and all that, and you just put in the universe and good vibes only and things like that. It's like, it's the same. It's the same body of work. It's just the names have been substituted, and that whole hippie movement. And yeah.
When I first arrived in New York, it was a hotbed of the occult, massively, and there was stores like the Golden the Magical Child, and there were like really popular magic shops, like really hardcore ones as well. And there was it was all over the place around the Lower East Side. It was everyone. I knew so many people who were practicing everything from Satanism to Wicca to Thelema to like Lovecraftian stuff, and it was big among the hackers and stuff, like the hacking scene. And it all just vanished. But there was a huge. I think one of the reasons why New York as a city lost its mystique is because all its like godless freaks left. All the best cities in the world have the occult involved. The occult is present, and all the blandest places don't. And I've noticed that all my life.
Yeah, like Seattle, so bland because there's no. I mean, there's a small occult community there, but they're incredibly woke. But no, but I think I want to say, I wanted to make a trip here to New York sometime in the last few years. I've been wanting to go back. I was there in 2016. I was there, and I felt the magic. That was the only time I've ever been to the city, but I've always been drawn to it, like from a previous incarnation, from previous incarnations. I'm pretty sure. I've always been drawn to that city, and I went there, and it was one of the fucking most magical experiences of my life. But I've been wanting to go back, but I felt like with all the weird restrictions and everything, I'll just like, no, it's not right now. But I think all those weird restrictions is, the bow's been pulled back and all that tension's been built up, and it's going to release that, and it's going to, snap and make things a little more chaotic in a good sense of that term, returning to the more native state of things with the natural chaos that exists, and we're talking like a Pete Carroll definition of the term chaos. Not chaos as in pandemonium, but chaos with a capital C or a capital K, whatever you want to spell it as. That idea of like a primordial, a soup that a magician, an artist can assemble something out of that primordial chaos and turn it into something like you're talking about, Thomas. There's all these groups of people there, and that's what sucks nowadays, is that there's so many witchy poo types and so many mytholemic types that are, not as in like McDonald's type, not because of anything Irish, but like the types that you get them off of like the dollar menu at McDonald's, dollar menu thelemic types and stuff like that, where it's like there's so much of that, but it's like, the real occult needs to come back, make the occult hidden again, make magic hidden again, and then we'll start having those. Yeah.
The most magical place in New York is the tip of Manhattan Island. There's a place called Inwood, and it's the end of the island, and then the South Bronx is just across the river. It's where the two rivers meet, the East River and the Hudson. Yeah. There you go, the two rivers meeting, the meetings of the water. The Dutch called the area, and it's still the name on the train station, Spouten-Duivel, which means the spouting devil. It's like a mystical forest at the end of Manhattan. There really is, and just where else, a few miles from all the skyscrapers is a mystical forest.
I know.
And it's never been developed, and I think it's because it's kept for that reason. The city fathers or the Masons know that it's a special place.
Yeah, I like that. I need to go there. And we're talking about cycle paths again, and I think there was one of the elevated train lines there that got converted into a walking path, not a cycle path.
The High Line.
The High Line, thank you.
Yeah, I used to walk on that one. There's still tracks on it. It went all the way down to Canal Street at one time, and there was always talks of it used to be a freight line. It used to go through buildings and everything. Yeah. There was another one under the ground, and there was a club called the Tunnel that was actually built, and the train tracks were actually in the nightclub.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Really cool, yeah. And but there was a very long tunnel that in New York had been forgotten for nearly over a century. The Atlantic Avenue line that ran through Brooklyn. It had been bricked up in like 1890, and there was a couple of miles of it. And some guy, everyone said, "Oh, it's gone, it's flooded." It was never found. It was built in years ago. And in the mid 1990s, some guy found it. He literally climbed in a drain and found a couple of miles long tunnel that was perfectly intact. And there were bottles down there from the workers, like soda bottles from like 1890 and stuff like that, when it was sealed up. But it was a huge tunnel that had been sealed up. But you imagine again that were in there.
Right. And I was going to say also too, those really nice glass subway tiles that they're probably still beautifully intact down there. Yeah.
The London Underground is the spookiest one of them all.
Yeah,
I told you about that
documentary.
The energy in the London Underground is as spooky as anything.
Yeah, we need to post that documentary from into the Beyond Room 313 Facebook page, and then please, if you, Thomas, so I don't forget, if you could send me something about that Atlantic City rail line thing, I'd like to look
Atlantic Avenue. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Atlantic Avenue. Thank you. Yeah. I want to look into that because I love that stuff. I love the railroad and all those things, and that's so cool. But that's a trip I'd like to do, is to go out there to New York and meet up with Manny Grossman again and some of those folks, and get something filmed out there, especially now that things are opening up back again and people are forgetting about the
I'll give you an occult rail line one that will blow your mind. All the rail lines in Ireland only connect all together at one place, directly underneath the Phoenix Park, underneath the largest Freemasonic obelisk in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's right under them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was there first. Yeah.
Right. And that energy coming either down into it and out through the tracks, or the other way, bringing energy into it and transmitting up. Or both. Probably a two-way communicator. That's so cool. So that's bigger than the Washington monument,
but that's not overtly Masonic. That one, this one.
Okay.
But this is the one I was talking about at the Wellington Monument. It's about the Battle of Waterloo, and the actual friezes are made from the metal cannons, captured French cannons. So the energy of the guys they killed are actually in these friezes. It used to terrify me as a kid.
Yeah,
it's immense. Yeah.
Speaking of New York and speaking of recycled material, I wonder how many structures have been built from the leftover remains of all the World Trade Center 9/11 debris, because I know they recycled all that, right, and used it for construction. I wonder, now that it's been 21 years, is that right?
Yeah.
2001. So yeah, that's an interesting synchronicity there, that this is the 21st year, 21 being a little bit more
Did you ever
important
hear
number.
about when they were building World Trade Center, one about the Banshees screams they were hearing from
Yeah.
the tower? And guess
Yeah.
what they built right below the bottom of it? A famine memorial for the Irish famine, and they brought a cottage over from the west of Ireland and completely rebuilt it stone by stone right under the new World Trade Center.
Really?
How
Didn't know
bizarre!
about that part, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, yeah, very weird. But yeah, it's just that's so interesting. I wonder about the structures that were built with the concrete from the destruction, and all of the human remains are probably still in that material, the
whole
DNA and
world
everything.
watching it.
Yeah, right. And just yeah, all that psychic charge. Like, what has happened to those structures now that they've been around for a couple of decades?
Didn't they export steel to like China or something?
Something, yeah, the steel, but I think a lot of the concrete ended up just staying here and going to those big recycling yards where they turn it from different sizes down to little powders and stuff. And
people would have inhaled that. Just think of all the deaths that people would have inhaled.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. A 2.5-hour bus ride from Cancun takes you away from the thumping parties of spring break and into the once thriving ancient capital of the Yucatan Maya, Chichen Itza. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, thousands of tourists and locals pack in around the pyramid to recreate the parties of 1,000 years ago, sans the cutting out of hearts, and to watch the descent of Kukulkan. The carnival atmosphere fills the surrounding meadow with sounds of drums, traditional music, and cheering crowds. According to legend, twice a year, when the day and night are in balance, the pyramid dedicated to Kukulkan, or Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, is visited by its namesake. On the equinox, Kukulkan returns to Earth to commune with his worshippers, provide blessings for their full harvest and good health before entering the sacred water, bathing in it and continuing through it on his way to the underworld. A hand clap near the base of the pyramid results in an unusual chirping echo, which is said to replicate the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. All legends aside, crafty and mathematically brilliant architecture are combined with the natural rotation of the earth creates an amazing and somewhat eerie image of a giant snake crawling down the temple. For 5 hours, an illusion of light and shadow creates 7 triangles on the side of the staircase, starting at the top and inching its way down, until it connects to the top platform with the giant stone head of the feathered serpent at the bottom. For 45 minutes, this impressive shadow stays in its entirety before slowly descending the pyramid and disappearing along with the crowd that gathered to see it. The Pyramid of Kukulkan, also known as El Castillo, a name given by the Spanish conquistadors, is the center of Chichen Itza. It was built over a pre-existing temple between 800 and 900 CE. It is the biggest pyramid in Chichen Itza, at its base 53.3 meters wide on all 4 sides. It towers above the other monuments at 24 meters tall with a 6-meter temple on top of the highest platform. Before access to the throne room of the pyramid was restricted, you could climb to the top and on a clear day, see the top of the Grand Pyramid at the nearby ruin site of Ek Balam. The Mesoamerican fascination with and knowledge of math and astronomy shines when examining the details of this architecture. Each of the 4 sides has 91 steps ascending it, 364 steps in total, with the temple topping the pyramid considered an addition step totaling 365. Each step representing a day in the calendar. Additionally, the pyramid's 9 stages, bisected by a staircase on each side, represents the 18 months of the Maya calendar year. The pyramid was built to be a physical representation of the Maya calendar, the same calendar that predicted the end of the world in 2012, while its orientation, slightly northeast, is believed to have been calculated in order to create the phenomenon known as the descent of Kukulkan. This phenomenon is recreated nightly, artificially, during the light and sound show at 7 p.m. in winter and 8 p.m. in the summer. Chichen Itza is one of the new 7 wonders of the world and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The archaeological site features various structures that are grouped into major clusters. The most famous and visited cluster is the Great North Platform, where besides the Kukulkan Pyramid, one can find the Temple of the Jaguars and the Great Ball Court. I went there, it's probably been about 12 years ago by now. it is, the energy there is, it's wild. And they there was this guy, the ball court that they're talking about, where they played, you've seen, you know, it's kind of like a version of basketball that they would play, but it echoes. And one of the tour guides did this really cool demonstration where he stood really, really, really far away, but because of the acoustics, he whispered and we could still hear him. And he was like, I don't know, 100 feet away or more. Yeah, it's really unfortunate though, because at the top of the pyramid, you can't go up there anymore. People are vandalizing it. In the very top temple part of it, there's a huge jade jaguar that you used to be able to go up there and see it.
Wow.
You can't do that anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, it's an amazing place. You would love it.
Yeah, I definitely want to get out there soon. That architecture to me, that Mesoamerican architecture, it almost looks space age to me. It looks like it's from an advanced civilization in the future. It doesn't look like it's from now or from the past. Right. I mean, and there's just so much of it there. Oh, they keep finding more and more in the jungles of Belize and Guatemala and Nicaragua. That was an enormous society. The so-called the Toltec one, the original one, whatever it was that made this stuff.
Right. Yeah, I want to say there's remain or ruins of something right around Mexico City too, where it's just the frame of some of these structures, that whether they were recently demolished or not. But you can go around and look around on Google Earth and stuff, and I want to say it's in Mexico City where you can just find outlines of this stuff still. But I would imagine too this previous civilization probably expanded up into North America too. And that whole thing of, like we were talking about in the last show, there being some sort of cataclysmic event that there was tremendous lava flow over this part of the country and tremendous amounts of just boulders and stuff being washed away, and these floods could have knocked out some of the artifacts that were left over from the civilization, at least up here on the northern part of the continent. But I agree, there's something incredibly almost like you're saying, kind of spacefaring about these ruins that this is stylish.
Almost stylish.
Yeah, and I want to say they're maybe from 2 iterations ago of civilization. I would like to think that this is just a natural thing where civilizations grow and then they get cut off, and they grow and they get cut down, and they grow and they get cut down. And I think this has happened for as long as time is old. And when they talked about, it's not necessarily the end of the world that the calendar predicted, but the end of a cycle and the beginning of another one. And perhaps they were with these long count calendars, the Mayan long count calendars we call it, was just predicting the end of this current civilization cycle, sometime around 2012, or if he was dyslexic, maybe it was 2021.
I think those things are much older, and they've lasted better because they're not subject to the same climatic issues that ancient megaliths in northern Europe are, between high winds, high rain, and frost, constantly chipping away at the stone. It's a very stable, dry climate down there, so therefore there would be less erosion from the wind and rain, and no ice at all. So I think those things could be much, much older. And then they say it was built on top of an existing temple.
Right. Yeah. Layers upon layers. This seems to be the name of the game on the planet, is just layers on top of layers. And John Stewart Price, again, he's saying this, they were in Illinois as well. Yeah, I know there's all kinds of interesting things around the Great Lakes area. We were talking about that one last week or the week before, I think, too, or in one of the recent shows. But it's just, the whole time scale of things. It's just there's so much information that's been withheld from our textbooks, especially as Americans. And it's like, we go out there and the things that you can actually see with your own eyes and go out and observe with your own senses, it's just, it tells a different story. The architecture and the topography, the geography, everything tells a different story than our textbooks do. And there's no wonder why so many of us that, went to school in that era don't remember shit from history, or don't remember shit from our education, because it wasn't an education. It was just an indoctrination. And indoctrination, that's something that has to be maintained. You have to, well, obviously now that there's, all these people going through their higher education and stuff, they get it maintained and they get locked into that paradigm. But the rest of us, we don't maintain any of it, because a lot of it was bullshit, in my opinion. A lot of it was just covering up some of these, the actual true history, of this continent or of the world itself.
It's everywhere, Jason. Sigiriya in Sri Lanka, that's a bullshit story that it was built in the 1500s. This is pure bullshit. And it was just, the Buddhists built it. The same crap that the Jesuits sell in the East, in the West, the Buddhists sell in the East.
Right.
There's nothing before Buddha. And all around Sigiriya, which they never talk about, are these giant boulders all in the jungle, and they've all got these notches in them. And they used to hold large pieces of crystals. They used to focus on Sigiriya. And if you look at my film on Sigiriya, I took photographs, I'm not kidding you, crystals the size of a man jutting from the mountain, pointing into the jungle where these and I spent a day there, and I was going around. Its problem was that the guy showed me a cave just at the edge of the thing that had an ancient writing, and I said, "Well, who are these people?" "Oh, we don't know. They were devil worshippers." That's what the Buddhists that's the official line. And then I said, "I want to go have a look in all the jungle." So I went to the jungle on my own, and I started finding these huge boulders with these perfectly square notches about that size in them, right? But I had to get out because the place is full of crocodiles and cobras. But I got to see and photograph enough of them, and apparently there's hundreds of them So Sigiriya had all these crystals pointing at it. But what did I tell you? It was built by Buddhists in the early 1500s, and the lion gate was a lion. It's not some kind of reptilian creature. That's what it was.
That picture of you standing in front of it, right?
Yeah.
That ain't no lion. Yeah. Yeah. I like that though. I like being, when people like us go out there and look into these things on our own. We don't have grants to help us do this. We don't have, we're going out there and researching these things on our own because we enjoy it, because we're drawn to it, because it would be wrong to do anything else other than to research these things.
Yeah.
So that.
Oh yeah. And I was talking to some guy when I got back, and he says, "Oh, you can spend years in that jungle. It's full of megaliths all around there. You just don't care."
Right. Yeah. But all right. Well.
All right. Well, I think we wrapped it up.
Yeah, that was a good show.
Yeah, it was. Thank you to everybody who joined in, and thank you for bearing with me. I am just suffering right now. My allergies fully kicked my ass. But yeah, thank you guys again for showing up and commenting and liking and sharing and everything when it's out there. And go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. Before we cut off, I will be this Wednesday, the 30th, at 9 p.m. UK Irish times. I will be doing a special on the Irish Inquiry with Australian comic Steve Hughes, who you know from BR313, and Irish comic Aidan Killian, on not only just the state of comedy today, but also the state of the arts in general. Why bands can't find places to play, why this everything, and who's controlling it and why. So that'll be something to look forward to.
Fantastic. All right, you guys. Well, we will see you out there in the wild, and then we'll be back next week.